look more closely at the ego thought system, what it means to identify with it, and then look at what we do as egos in the world. Starting with the premise that either God or the ego is insane. And by insane, we mean having a break from reality or denying reality, repressing it, and suppressing it. So either God or the ego is out of touch with reality. If the world exists, then God is insane, because an all-loving, all-powerful, all-knowing God would not create a world of suffering in which you're born into it only to suffer, experience loss, and then die. Sure, there can be some pleasant moments, but you can't escape suffering, loss, and death in this world. So if the world exists, God is insane and can't be all-loving, all-powerful, all-knowing. If the ego is insane, then it is in direct opposition to reality, which would be that there is no world, oneness is reality, and the ego has somehow separated from reality. What is the ego? The ego is a thing of madness and despair. So identifying with that thought system of hate and murder, we become one with it. So initially, we chose the ego thought system as the decision maker, which is the same as choosing to believe the idea of separation. I'm capable of separating from heaven, and now I'm left with the ego thought system. It's hatred because it hated God, heaven, love, oneness, wanted to be on its own. And it's murderous because it was willing to sacrifice those things on behalf of itself. The truth was one, and now it's 8 billion. And we, as a son of God, wanted out from the tyranny of love so that we could experience our autonomy and separation from it, which left us with its opposite, hatred and murder. Identifying with that thought system made us terrified. God's angry, he's going to destroy me. So just as love extends, hate projects. Hate is intolerable, so we project it outside of ourselves. And that projection of hate and terror in our minds became a world that seemed to be outside of us. We projected out those ideas, saw it, we saw it because we believed it because we wanted it to be true. One of the things that can escape us, and I think often does, is every step along the way was a decision made by the Son of God with full understanding of the consequences. We don't remember making those choices and wanting the consequence of being a body in a world, an individual, because of forgetfulness. So there's a veil of forgetfulness. When you make a choice and you identify with something, you forget what came before. The very identification with something makes everything before it disappear. That is the nature of denial, and that's the nature of repression. They're out of mind. We don't look at them. They're still in the mind, and the truth remains untouched. Not one note in heaven's song is missed by a choice that was made, but it very much seems missed by us, who seem to live in a world that is painful. Our individual lives are painful. What we witness is painful. So what do we do as egos in this world? We are now the ego. It is not a voice or an option to us. We experience ourselves as it. We identify with it and believe it's our reality. As the ego is described as a thing of madness and despair, that description applies to us now. We are now things of madness and despair. Everywhere in the Course where there's a description of an ego, we can substitute what we believe we are. So underneath the dreaming of the world is the secret dream. Secret dream is, I'm a murderer. I destroyed heaven. I abandoned God and turned my back on him. But now in the projected image that I seem to live in, others are the murderer and terrible people. So here we blame each other. We serve a purpose for each other. Our actions make people understand why they feel terrible. It's because of something we did, or it's because of something they did. We never suspect we feel terrible because of something in our minds. Just as love makes no comparison, we can't stop making them. We're keeping track of all of the sinful deeds of others to prove our innocence to God. And that's one of the ultimate purposes there. We blame other people to maintain the dream, illusion, hallucination. But we also blame them because even though we think we destroyed God in heaven by believing in separation, we also appeal to God to give us special favor. We hated him and chose the ego thought system, but we want special favor from him. We want him to acknowledge our specialness, condemn the bad egos, and reward our good ego. By comparison, we see ourselves as better and unsullied than what we witness other bodies do and think and say. We want God to join us in our insanity, and that is impossible. The truth can't join us in our insanity. We're experiencing the opposite of truth, truth's denial. To quote chapter 23, section 1, the ego always marches to madness. The ego always marches to defeat because it thinks that triumph over you is possible, and God thinks otherwise. God doesn't know you as a separated, terrified, hateful little self. He knows you only as a part of oneness, perfect wholeness, with no anxiety or negative emotion to mar the perfect peace he experiences and knows you do too as part of that oneness. Lesson 93 is called Light and Peace and Joy Abide in Me. But the first line of that lesson, that light and peace and joy abide in me, which is a statement and reflection of the truth of what you are, states, you think you are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. That is a recognition that identifying with the ego thought system means you believe you think. You believe you are what you identified with. I identify with the ego, I am the ego. If you identify with the Holy Spirit's thought system, then you experience yourself as the reflection of heaven. You are it. You don't have it. You don't get it. You are the reflection by your experience. Understanding that the ego is one voice kind of disassociates us from that identification. I'm not the ego. I'm listening to the voice of the ego. I am the observer. When I listen to the voice of the ego, I join with it and believe its lies. So when you open up a choice about what voice you're going to listen to, what voice is going to tell you what the truth is, you kind of can decide, I'm not going to listen to the ego. When we wander the earth, we're all listening to the ego. That's what we're all doing. The only thing we can do is look upon it with a gentle smile that says, that is not the truth. Separation is not the truth in me. Separation is not the truth in you. And this can be undone. Being able to watch that with the gentle smile, with no judgment, without calling it any bad names, is its undoing. And that is our life's purpose. That is what forgiveness is. Whatever special message you hear from the ego or I hear from the ego thought system doesn't matter. The content's the same for all ego messages. So yours could be very different from mine. Everyone's is very different from each other. We all hear special messages because we believe we're special. But the bottom line, the content of all of those messages, no matter what they are, you're beautiful, you're ugly, you're tall, you're too fat, you're too thin, you're too tall, you're too short. Whatever the ego is telling you, what you are physically as a body, what you need to get physically as a body, what you should value in this world, what you should not value in this world, all of those special messages that individuals receive have the same content, and that is this: you're separate from God and doomed to live a while, suffer, experience loss, and then die. And God thinks otherwise. Thank you for listening.